Danny Cole had never seen so many aliens in one place. The trade summit on Station 9 brought together species from every corner of the galaxy, and the massive hall was filled with creatures of every shape and size. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated through the air or slithered across the polished floors. The noise of 100 different languages mixed together into a strange kind of music that Danny found both exciting and overwhelming. He stood near the entrance with his colleague, a veteran diplomat who had spent 20 years working with alien species. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Danny respected her more than anyone else in the Earth diplomatic corps, and he was grateful she had agreed to mentor him through his first major summit. "Stay close and say little," told him quietly. "Most species here think humans are either dangerous animals or primitive children. We need to change that opinion slowly, not all at once." Danny nodded. He understood the situation perfectly. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago, and humanity was still considered a newcomer. Worse than that, Earth was classified as a planet so hostile and dangerous that most species could not survive there for even a single day. This classification made many aliens look at humans with a mixture of fear and contempt. The summit was held in a circular hall with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Hundreds of delegates moved between conversation groups, making deals and forming alliances that would shape galactic trade for the next decade. Danny noticed that many of them glanced at him, and with curiosity or suspicion. A few even stepped back when the humans walked past, as if they were afraid of catching some terrible disease. "The tall ones with the silver shells are explained as they walked. "They control most of the luxury goods trade in this sector. Very wealthy, very proud, and very convinced that they are better than everyone else." Danny looked at They were impressive creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall with elegant bodies covered in metallic shells that gleamed under the lights. Their movements were graceful and precise, and they spoke in musical tones that carried across the hall. Other species seemed to treat them with great respect, stepping aside when they approached and bowing their heads in greeting. "They do not like humans," added. "They think we are too violent and unpredictable. Last year, one of their nobles called us mud crawlers in an official document." Danny felt a flash of anger but pushed it down. He was here to represent Earth, not to start fights. "I will be polite," he promised. Smiled slightly. "That is all I ask." They spent the next hour moving through the hall, introducing themselves to various delegates and discussing minor trade agreements. Danny found that most aliens were at least willing to talk to them, even if they kept their distance. A few were genuinely friendly, like the traders who seemed fascinated by human manufacturing techniques, and the scientists who wanted to learn more about Earth's biodiversity. But they ignored them completely. Every time Danny approached a group that included, the tall aliens would turn away and continue their conversations as if the humans did not exist. It was a calculated insult, and Danny knew it. He also knew that reacting would only make things worse. The evening reception began as the artificial lights dimmed to simulate sunset. Servants from a dozen species moved through the crowd carrying trays of food and drink suited to different biological needs. Danny accepted a glass of something that looked like water but tasted faintly of honey. He was standing near a window that looked out at the stars when he heard a voice behind him. "So these are the famous." Danny turned to find a standing directly behind him. This one was younger than the others, with a shell that shone bright gold instead of silver. His compound eyes reflected the starlight in a way that made them look like they were filled with fire. He was smiling, but there was no warmth in his expression. "I am Danny Cole, representative of Earth," Danny said calmly. "May I know your name?" "I am of the noble house," the replied. He did not offer any greeting or bow, which Danny knew was another deliberate insult. "I have heard much about your species. They say you come from a world of poison and violence." "Earth has its challenges," Danny admitted, "but we are proud of our home." made a sound that might have been laughter. Proud of a planet that tries to kill everything that lives on it. Your world is filled with deadly weather, savage predators, poisonous plants, and diseases that would destroy most species in days. How can you be proud of such a nightmare? Danny felt other delegates turning to watch the exchange. Was across the room, too far away to help. He was on his own. We survived all of those things, Danny said simply. That is why we are here. You survived because you had no choice, replied. A rat survives in the sewers, but that does not make it worthy of sitting at the table with civilized beings. Your presence here is an insult to every species that earned their place through culture and achievement. The words hit Danny like physical blows, but he kept his face calm. He could feel the eyes of dozens of delegates on him, waiting to see how the human would respond. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed amused. A few were whispering to each other in languages Danny did not understand. I did not come here to insult anyone, Danny said. I came to trade and to learn. Earth has much to offer the galaxy. Earth has nothing to offer except violence and disease, said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Your species should have stayed in your mud and left civilized space to civilized beings. He turned and walked away before Danny could respond, leaving the human standing alone under the gaze of the entire hall. Danny took a slow breath and finished his drink. He did not chase after or shout angry words. He simply stood there, calm and controlled, until the attention of the crowd moved elsewhere. Appeared at his side a moment later. Are you all right? I am fine, Danny said. He wanted me to lose my temper. I did not give him that satisfaction. Nodded with approval. Good, but this is not over, is known for holding grudges. He will come for you again. Danny looked across the hall to where was speaking with other, occasionally glancing back at the humans with contempt in his fiery eyes. Let him come, Danny said quietly. I will be ready. The next morning brought the official trade negotiations, and Danny found himself sitting at a long curved table with representatives from 30 different species. They sat at the head of the table, their silver shells gleaming under the bright lights of the council chamber. Was among them, and Danny could feel the young noble's eyes on him throughout the entire session. The negotiations were tedious but important. Species argued over shipping routes, tariff rates, and resource allocations. Danny spoke when Earth's interests were involved, presenting his proposals in clear and simple terms. He noticed that several delegates seemed surprised by his calm and professional manner. Perhaps they had expected to bang his fists on the table or threaten violence when things did not go his way. During a break in the proceedings, Danny stepped out onto a balcony that overlooked the station's central garden. The garden was an artificial paradise filled with plants from 100 different worlds, carefully arranged to create a peaceful retreat for tired diplomats. Danny leaned against the railing and watched a small fountain spray water into the air, creating tiny rainbows in the artificial sunlight. "The appreciates beauty," said a mocking voice behind him. "How unexpected." Danny did not turn around. He knew who it was. Beauty exists on Earth too, perhaps more than you imagine. Walked up to stand beside him, looking down at the garden with obvious disinterest. I have seen images of your world. Jungles filled with creatures that eat each other alive. Oceans full of monsters with teeth longer than my arm. Deserts where the heat can kill in hours. Mountains that shake and explode with fire. What beauty can exist in such a place? All of those things are beautiful in their own way, Danny said. The jungle is full of life and color. The ocean is vast and mysterious. The desert has sunsets that would take your breath away. The mountains remind us that the world is bigger than we are. Made a dismissive sound. You speak like a poet, but poetry does not change facts. Your species evolved in a war zone. Violence is written into your very nature. I have read the reports about human history. You spent thousands of years killing each other over land, resources, religion, and ideas. Even now, with all your technology, you still struggle to live in peace. Danny finally turned to look at and your species, have the never-known war. We left such primitive behavior behind millions of years ago, said proudly. Our civilization has been peaceful and stable for longer than your species has existed. We do not need to fight because we have evolved beyond such crude impulses. Or perhaps you have never faced a situation where fighting was necessary, Danny suggested quietly. His compound eyes flickered with annoyance. What do you mean by that? I mean that peace is easy when life is easy. Humans learned to fight because we had to fight. We fought against predators that wanted to eat us. We fought against diseases that wanted to kill us. We fought against the weather, the terrain, and 1,000 other dangers that your species has never faced. Our violence is not a flaw. It is a survival tool. A survival tool that you turn against each other, pointed out. Danny nodded slowly. Yes, we are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes throughout our history, but we have also learned from those mistakes. We are still learning. That is what makes us different from species that never had to struggle. Leaned closer, his golden shell catching the light. Different. You think struggling makes you special. It makes you dangerous. It makes you unpredictable. The galaxy would be safer if your species had never left that cursed rock you call home. Other delegates had gathered at the balcony entrance, drawn by the sound of raised voices. Danny saw among them, her face tight with concern. He also saw Ambassador, an elderly with a tarnished silver shell who served as the leader of the delegation. The old ambassador watched the exchange with unreadable eyes. The galaxy has many dangers, Danny said calmly. Pirates, raiders, hostile species that would destroy civilizations for their resources. Do you really think those dangers will ignore you because you evolved beyond violence? Or do you rely on other species to protect you while you look down on them from your perfect world? Straightened to his full height, towering over the human. You dare to lecture me? You, whose ancestors were eating raw meat and living in caves while my ancestors were building starships. My ancestors survived, Danny replied. They survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and disasters that would have wiped out most species. They survived because they were strong enough and clever enough and determined enough to keep going when everything around them was trying to kill them. What did your ancestors survive? The question hung in the air like a blade. Compound eyes blazed with fury, but before he could respond, Ambassador stepped forward and placed a slender hand on the young noble's shoulder. That is enough, the old said quietly. You have made your point, let the human go. Shrugged off the ambassador's hand. I have not finished. Yes, you have, said firmly. The negotiations are resuming. We should return to the chamber. For a long moment, stared at Danny with naked hatred in his fiery eyes. Then he turned and walked away without another word, his golden shell flashing as he disappeared into the corridor. Ambassador lingered for a moment, studying Danny with ancient eyes. You handle yourself well, human, better than most would in your position. Thank you, Ambassador. Do not thank me yet, said. Is young and proud and foolish, but he has powerful friends. This confrontation is far from over. Danny nodded, I understand. Turned to leave, then paused and looked back. For what it is worth, I do not share my nephew's views about your species. Humans are interesting, perhaps more interesting than realizes. With that, the old ambassador walked away, leaving Danny alone on the balcony with the sound of the fountain and the distant murmur of alien voices. Appeared beside him a moment later. What happened? Wanted to continue our conversation from last night, Danny said. I may have said some things that made him angry. I saw his face when he left. Angry does not begin to describe it. Shook her head. You need to be careful, Danny. They have influence here. They could make things very difficult for Earth if they decide we are too much trouble. I know, Danny said, but I will not apologize for defending our species. Humans have nothing to be ashamed of. Studied him for a long moment, then smiled slightly. No, we do not. Come on, the negotiations are starting again. Try not to start any more wars before lunch. Danny laughed quietly and followed her back into the council chamber, where the real challenge was still waiting. The evening banquet was the largest gathering of the entire summit. Every delegate was required to attend, and the great hall was filled with hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. Long tables held food suited to every biology, and musicians from a dozen worlds played strange and beautiful melodies that blended together into something entirely new. Danny wore his formal diplomatic uniform, a simple dark suit with Earth's symbol on his chest. He stood near one of the viewing windows, watching the endless stars while they waited for the official ceremonies to begin. The tension from the morning's confrontation still hung in the air, and Danny could feel other delegates watching him with renewed interest. "Word has spread about your exchange with," said quietly. "Some of the other species are impressed that you stood up to him. They have been bullying smaller delegations for years, and no one has ever pushed back." "I was not trying to push back," Danny said. "I was just telling the truth. Sometimes the truth is the most powerful weapon of all." A chime sounded through the hall, signaling the start of the formal portion of the evening. Delegates moved to their assigned seats, arranged in a great circle around a central platform where speakers would address the assembly. Danny and took their places in the section reserved for newer species, far from the center of power where they sat in positions of honor. The speeches began with welcomes and thanks from the station administrators, followed by representatives from the major trading powers. Each speaker talked about cooperation and mutual benefit, using careful diplomatic language that said much without actually promising anything. Danny listened politely and tried not to let his attention wander, then rose from his seat and walked to the central platform. Danny felt his stomach tighten. This was not on the official schedule. He glanced at who shook her head slightly. She did not know what was happening either. "Fellow delegates," began, his musical voice carrying easily through the hall, "I wish to speak about a matter of great importance to the future of our galactic community. I wish to speak about standards." A murmur ran through the crowd. Danny noticed Ambassador watching his nephew with a worried expression. "For millions of years, the civilized species of this galaxy have built a community based on shared values," continued. "We have created laws and customs that allow us to live together in peace. We have set standards for behavior, for ethics, for what it means to be truly civilized. These standards have served us well." He paused and turned to look directly at Danny across the crowded hall. "But now those standards are being challenged. Now we are being asked to accept species that do not share our values, species that come from worlds of violence and chaos, species whose very nature is built on aggression and destruction. I speak, of course, of the humans." The murmur grew louder. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. Others leaned forward with interest. "The humans come from a planet so hostile that most civilized beings cannot survive there for a single day. They evolved through constant warfare against their environment, against other creatures, and against each other. Violence is not something humans learned. It is something they are." Danny felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to remain still. His hand touched his arm in warning. "I do not say this to insult the humans," continued, though his tone made it clear that insult was exactly his intention. "I say this because we must be honest about what we are dealing with. Allowing humans full access to galactic trade is like inviting a predator into a nursery. They may promise to behave, but their nature will always win in the end." He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire assembly. "I propose that we reconsider Earth's application for full trading status. I propose that we establish strict controls on human activity outside their own system. I propose that we protect our civilization from a species that does not belong here." Finished his speech and remained standing on the platform, waiting for a response. The hall was silent except for the soft music that continued to play in the background. Danny stood up. Every eye in the room turned to him, tried to pull him back down, but he gently shook off her hand and walked toward the central platform. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "You have the floor," the station administrator said formally, though he looked nervous. Danny stepped onto the platform and faced. The towered over him, but Danny did not flinch or look away. "You have said much about humans tonight," Danny began, his voice calm and steady. "You have talked about our violent nature, our dangerous world, our primitive history. You have suggested that we are not civilized enough to join your community, but you have left out one very important fact." He paused and looked around the hall at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. "You have left out the fact that everything humans are, we became on our own. Every step of our evolution, every advance in our technology, every achievement of our civilization came from our own effort, our own struggle, our own determination to survive against impossible odds." Danny turned back to, looking up at the golden-shelled noble with steady eyes. "Can you say the same?" His compound eyes flickered. "What do you mean?" "I mean that they did not evolve naturally," Danny said. "Your species was created, engineered, designed by the architects, the ancient precursor race that disappeared 1,000,000 years ago. Your perfect bodies, your peaceful nature, your advanced intelligence were all given to you as gifts. You did not earn them." A gasp ran through the crowd. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ambassador closed his eyes. "You mock humans for coming from Danny continued. "But we survived that without any help. We fought our way to the stars using nothing but our own minds and our own hands. We are not perfect, but everything we are, we built ourselves." He stepped close enough to see his own reflection in those compound eyes. "So tell me, of the noble house, what have they ever survived? What have you ever built without the gifts that were handed to you by beings greater than yourselves?" Danny spoke his final words slowly and clearly, making sure everyone in the hall could hear them. "We survived. You were engineered." 5 words, 5 simple words that changed everything. His golden shell seemed to lose its shine. His proud posture crumbled. His musical voice failed him completely. He stood there on the platform, speechless and exposed, as the truth of Danny's words echoed through the silent hall. Danny did not wait for a response. He turned and walked back to his seat, his footsteps the only sound in the vast chamber, stared at him with wide eyes as he sat down beside her. "What did you just do?" she whispered. Danny watched as finally stumbled off the platform, surrounded by concerned, who tried to shield him from the stares of the other delegates. "I told the truth," Danny said quietly, "nothing more." The hours following Danny's speech were the most chaotic of the entire summit. Delegates gathered in small groups throughout the station, speaking in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. They had retreated to their private quarters, and rumors spread that had been confined to his room under orders from Ambassador. Danny sat in the small lounge assigned to the Earth delegation, nursing a cup of coffee while paced back and forth across the room. She had not stopped moving since they left the banquet hall. "Do you understand what you have done?" she asked for the 3rd time. "You publicly humiliated the most powerful species at the summit. You revealed information about their origins that they have spent trying to downplay. You made an enemy of the entire delegation." "I know," Danny said calmly. "Then why do you look so relaxed?" Danny took a sip of his coffee. "Because I did not lie. Everything I said was true. They were engineered by the architects. It is recorded in a dozen historical databases. They just do not like to talk about it because it undermines their claim to superiority." Stopped packing and stared at him. Being right does not always mean being smart. They could destroy our trade agreements with a single word. They could block our access to half the markets in this sector. "They could try," Danny agreed, "but I do not think they will." "Why not?" Before Danny could answer, there was a knock at the door. Tensed, but Danny rose calmly and opened it. Ambassador stood in the corridor, alone and without guards. His tarnished silver shell looked even duller than usual under the harsh lighting. His ancient eyes held an expression that Danny could not quite read. "May I come in?" the old asked. Danny stepped aside and gestured for him to enter. Hand moved toward the small defensive device she carried in her pocket, but she did not draw it. Walked slowly into the room and looked around at the modest furnishings. "Your quarters are not very impressive," he observed. "The summit administrators should have given you better accommodations." "We did not come here for luxury," Danny said. "We came to trade." Nodded and turned to face the humans. "I owe you an apology. My nephew's behavior has been shameful. He does not represent the views of all despite what he might claim." "I appreciate that," Danny said, "but you did not come here just to apologize." The old ambassador smiled slightly. It was a strange expression on his face. "You are perceptive. No, I came to tell you that what you said tonight has caused quite a reaction among the other delegations." Crossed her arms. "What kind of reaction?" "A positive one, mostly. Many species have resented arrogance for centuries, but none of them dared to challenge us openly. You, a representative of a species that has been part of the galactic community for only 15 years, did what they could not. That has earned you considerable respect." Danny set down his coffee cup. "I was not trying to earn respect. I was defending my species against unfair attacks." "And that is precisely why it worked," said. "You spoke from conviction, not from political calculation. The other delegates saw that. They saw a human who was not afraid to stand up for what he believed, even against overwhelming opposition. That is a rare quality in diplomatic circles." He moved to the window and looked out at the stars. "They want to meet with you tomorrow. They are a warrior race, and they were very impressed by your courage. They have already drafted a proposal for an exclusive trade agreement with Earth. Even the, who usually stay neutral in everything, have asked to arrange scientific exchanges with human researchers." His expression shifted from worry to cautious hope. "You are saying that Danny's speech actually helped us?" "More than you realize," said. "They have dominated galactic trade for so long that many species had forgotten there were alternatives. You reminded them that power can come from unexpected places. You showed them that a small, young species from a dangerous world could challenge the established order and survive." Danny felt something ease in his chest. He had been certain that he was doing the right thing when he stood up too, but he had not been sure what the consequences would be. To hear that his words had actually helped Earth's position was a relief beyond measure. "What about he asked. "Will there be retaliation?" Turned away from the window. "Will be sent home in disgrace. His career in diplomacy is finished. As for the rest of us, we will need time to adjust to this new situation. But I do not think there will be any direct action against Earth. The other species would not support it, and we cannot afford to isolate ourselves further." He walked toward the door, then paused. "There is one more thing. The Council of Species has called an emergency session for tomorrow afternoon. They want to discuss Earth's status in the galactic community. I believe they intend to upgrade your standing from observer to full member." His eyes widened. "Full membership, that would have taken us decades to achieve through normal channels." "Decades that you no longer need to wait," said. "Your young representative here has accomplished more in one evening than most diplomats achieve in their entire careers." He opened the door and stepped into the corridor, then looked back at Danny with those ancient, unreadable eyes. "My nephew asked what humans have to offer the galaxy. I think you answered his question quite thoroughly. Humanity offers something we have not seen in a very long time: courage, determination, the willingness to stand against the tide no matter the cost. These are qualities the galaxy needs more of." With that, Ambassador walked away, his slow footsteps echoing down the empty corridor. collapsed into a chair and let out a long breath. I cannot believe that just happened. Danny picked up his coffee again and found that it had gone cold. He did not mind. I told you they would not retaliate. You could not have known that. No, Danny admitted. But I knew that the truth has a power of its own. When you speak honestly and without fear, people listen, even people who do not want to hear what you have to say. Shook her head slowly. You are either the bravest diplomat I have ever met or the craziest. Danny smiled, maybe both. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars turn slowly outside the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, and new opportunities. But for now, it was enough to know that they had taken a step forward, that Earth's voice had been heard in the vast chorus of galactic civilization. Get some sleep, said finally. We have a busy day ahead. Danny nodded and headed for his room. As he lay in bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, he thought about everything that had happened. He thought about hatred, about quiet respect, about the eyes of all those alien delegates watching him speak. He thought about Earth, spinning slowly in the distant darkness, a small blue world that had produced a species tough enough to survive anything. 5 words, he thought, that was all it took, 5 words to change everything. He smiled in the darkness and closed his eyes, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The final day of the summit arrived with a sense of anticipation that filled every corridor of Station 9. Delegates moved through the halls with purpose, and everywhere Danny walked, he felt eyes following him. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with respect, a few with something that might have been hope. The Council of Species met in the largest chamber on the station, a vast amphitheater that could hold representatives from every known civilization. Danny and took their seats in the visitor section, surrounded by other observers who had come to witness the historic session. I still cannot believe we are here, whispered. Full membership was supposed to be generations away. Things change, Danny said simply. The council president, a graceful being from a species Danny did not recognize, called the session to order. The chamber fell silent as she outlined the purpose of the meeting. We have gathered to discuss the status of Earth and its human inhabitants within our galactic community. Recent events have prompted us to reconsider our previous assessment of this species. We will hear testimony and then vote on the proposal to elevate Earth from observer status to full membership. The testimony lasted for hours. Representatives from various species spoke about their interactions with humans, their observations of human behavior, and their opinions on whether humanity was ready to join the galactic community as full partners. Some were enthusiastic supporters, others expressed caution, a few remained skeptical. Then the council president called Danny's name. Danny walked down the long aisle to the central platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on his back. He climbed the steps and stood alone in the center of the vast chamber, a single human facing the gathered might of galactic civilization. You may speak, the president said. Danny looked around the amphitheater, meeting as many eyes as he could. He had thought about what he would say all night, but now that the moment had arrived, he found that the prepared words did not feel right. He took a breath and spoke from his heart instead. I am not going to tell you that humans are perfect. We are not. Our history is filled with wars, with cruelty, with mistakes that cost millions of lives. We have hurt each other in ways that I cannot explain or excuse. If you judge us by our worst moments, you would be right to keep us far away from your community. He paused, letting the words settle. But our worst moments are not the whole story. Humans have also shown compassion beyond measure. We have built hospitals to heal the sick, schools to teach the young, and shelters to protect the vulnerable. We have created art and music and literature that celebrates the beauty of existence. We have looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them, even when we did not have the tools to make that dream real. Danny thought of Earth, so far away but so present in his mind. He thought of the billions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this distant chamber. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day of our existence. Our planet threw ice ages and plagues and disasters at us, and we survived. Not because we were given special gifts or engineered for success, but because we refused to give up. That determination is the core of who we are. When things get hard, humans do not surrender. We adapt. We overcome. We find a way. He turned slowly, addressing every section of the amphitheater. I know that some of you fear us. You look at our violent history and you wonder if we can be trusted. You worry that we will bring our conflicts into your peaceful community. I understand that fear, but I ask you to consider this. The very same determination that made us dangerous also makes us valuable. When the galaxy faces threats that peaceful species cannot handle alone, humans will stand beside you. When disasters strike and others flee, humans will run toward the danger to help. When hope seems lost, humans will keep fighting until the very end. Danny's voice grew stronger, filled with quiet conviction. We do not ask you to trust us blindly. We ask for the chance to earn that trust. Let us show you what humans can do when we work alongside other species instead of struggling alone. Let us prove that the fire that burns inside us can warm as well as destroy. Let us be part of your community, not because we deserve it yet, but because we are determined to deserve it someday. He stopped speaking and stood in silence, waiting for whatever would come next. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then, from somewhere in the upper seats, a single pair of hands began to clap. The sound was human. Danny looked up and saw on her feet, her hands moving together in the ancient gesture of approval. Other sounds joined hers. Not clapping because most species did not have hands suited for it, but their own versions of applause. Stomping feet, humming voices, clicking mandibles. The noise built and built until it filled the entire amphitheater, a chorus of approval from 100 different worlds. The council president let the sound continue for a full minute, before raising her hand for silence. We will now vote on the proposal to grant Earth full membership in the galactic community of species. The voting took only moments. When the results appeared on the display screens around the chamber, Danny felt his heart stop for a single beat. The vote was nearly unanimous. Earth was now a full member of galactic civilization. Danny walked back to his seat in a daze, grabbed him in a fierce hug the moment he reached her, her professional composure completely forgotten. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You actually did it." Danny hugged her back, feeling tears that he did not bother to hide. "We did it. All of humanity did it. I just happened to be the one standing on the platform." The rest of the day passed in a blur of congratulations, handshakes with species that did not have hands, and promises of future cooperation. Danny met with the who offered Earth a place in their defensive alliance. He spoke with the who finalized the trade agreement that would open new markets for human goods. He even had a brief conversation with Ambassador, who simply nodded and said that his faith in humanity had been rewarded. As the station's artificial sun dimmed to simulate evening, Danny found himself alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars that had always seemed so distant and unreachable. "Quite a view," said a voice behind him. Walked up to stand beside him, holding 2 glasses of something that sparkled in the starlight. "I thought we should celebrate," she said, handing him one of the glasses. Danny took it and raised it toward the distant point of light that was Earth's sun. "To humanity," he said. "To humanity," agreed. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the stars turn slowly around them. "Can I ask you something?" said finally. "Those 5 words that changed everything. Where did you learn that they were engineered? I have been a diplomat for 20 years and I never knew that." Danny smiled. "My grandmother used to tell me stories when I was young. Stories about people who thought they were better than others because of where they came from or what they were born with. She always said that what matters is not what you are given, but what you do with what you earn. I remembered her words when was looking down at me, and I realized that they applied to him more than anyone. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She survived things that would have broken most people. She taught me that survival is its own kind of nobility. Nodded slowly. I think I understand now why you were chosen for this mission. The selection committee saw something in you that the rest of us missed. They saw a true human. Danny watched as a ship departed from the station, its engines leaving a trail of light against the darkness. We are all true humans, he said quietly. Every single one of us. That is what makes us strong. The stars continued to shine, endless and eternal, as two humans stood together on the edge of a new future, knowing that they had earned their place among them at last.